If you ask most architects what the most important skyscraper of the 20th century is, chances are you'll hear the name, the Seagram Building. But what's truly fascinating is that Mies van der Rohe's most famous decision wasn't about what he built. It was about what he deliberately chose not to build. On one of the most expensive plots of land in New York City, he moved 30 meters away from the street to build the building, leaving this space empty and replacing it with a public plaza. From a financial perspective, the decision seemed almost irrational, yet it would go on to reshape the design of office towers around the world.
When I first encountered this project, one question immediately came to mind. Why would a developer willingly sacrifice millions of dollars worth of rentable floor area? To answer that, we need to step back and understand how a skyscraper came into existence in the first place.
Beginning in the late 19th century, alongside the rise of the Chicago School, tall buildings spread rapidly across American cities. But this transformation wasn't driven by technology alone. Economics and politics played equally important roles. Architecture has always depended on the degree of freedom a society allows for construction. Through zoning laws, taxation, and private property rights, governments determine what can be built and how high it can rise. Compare the skyline of Copenhagen with that of New York today, and the difference in building heights is immediately obvious. This isn't merely an aesthetic choice. It reflects two fundamentally different visions of society. In the United States, economic freedom and private ownership occupy a central position, encouraging investment and competition in large-scale development. By contrast, many European countries rely on higher taxation and wealth redistribution to reduce economic inequality, naturally creating fewer incentives for massive commercial projects. That is why, in America, the skyscraper is more than just a tall building. It has become a symbol of economic power and capitalism itself.
So when Mies immigrated to the United States, he entered exactly the kind of environment where his architectural ideas could fully flourish. And perhaps no project expresses that vision more completely than the Seagram Building.
Completed in 1958 in collaboration with Philip Johnson, the Seagram Building remains one of the most influential works of modern architecture. Yet its defining feature is not the tower itself, but its setback from the street. Instead of maximizing the site's footprint, Mies pulled the building away from Park Avenue and created a generous public plaza in front of it. This allowed the tower to stand as an independent object rather than disappearing into the urban fabric, producing an entirely different spatial experience. The significance of this idea was so profound that it later influenced New York's zoning regulations and inspired the design of countless office towers around the world. The widespread adoption of this approach in subsequent decades demonstrated that Mies's decision was far more than a personal preference. It became an enduring architectural model.
But if you think the plaza is the Seagram Building's greatest story, look more closely at its facade. Because here, contrary to everything often associated with functionalism, Mies may have created his greatest paradox.
One of Mies's lifelong ambitions was to free interior space by moving structural columns away from the center of the plan. In smaller projects, this could be achieved relatively easily. But in a skyscraper, the entire structural load cannot simply be transferred to perimeter columns. As a result, the primary structural frame remained inside the building, which raises an important question. Are all those eye-shaped profiles visible on the facade actually structural? The answer is no. Between many of the windows, those bronze columns serve no structural purpose. Mies added them so that the rhythm of the structure would remain visually legible. At the same time, New York's fire regulations prohibited the direct exposure of structural steel. So instead, bronze I-beams were attached to the exterior skin, preserving the image of the structure without exposing the structural skeleton. And this is where an intriguing contradiction emerges. The architect who consistently advocated structural honesty employed elements that, in practice, functioned more as visual symbols than as load-bearing components.
Perhaps that's exactly why the Seagram Building is more than just a building. It's an architectural manifesto. Even its materials reinforce that message.
Today, bronze-colored finishes are common on building facades, but Mies chose to use real bronze. As bronze oxidizes over time, it develops a distinctive pattern and a richer character. The client willingly accepted the enormous additional cost to preserve this material quality. At the time of its completion, the Seagram Building was one of the most expensive office buildings ever constructed. But that expense became an integral part of its identity.
And once we step inside, we encounter another familiar idea, one that appears throughout Mies's work.
Mies consistently sought to eliminate unnecessary boundaries and create spaces that felt as unified and continuous as possible. Nowhere is this clearer than in the Seagram lobby. The columns sit outside the glass box. Natural light flows freely into the interior, and the boundary between the plaza and the lobby nearly disappears. The stone flooring, transparent glazing, and continuity of materials create the sensation that you're still moving through the city itself. If you compare the Seagram lobby with the National Gallery, the similarities become striking. It is as though Mies revisited the same spatial concept and reinterpreted it vertically within the form of a skyscraper, as if he has simply placed a glass box over the National Gallery.
But Mies's control extended beyond structure and planning. He even wanted to determine how people raised their window blinds.
The Seagram facade is organized around an exceptionally disciplined grid of glass and bronze. If every occupant adjusted their blinds independently, that order would dissolve, turning the facade into a patchwork of random visual interruptions. For that reason, the blinds were restricted to a limited number of standardized positions, ensuring that the building's exterior always maintained its compositional unity. For Mies, the facade did not belong to individual occupants. It belonged to the architectural identity of the building as a whole. Of course, this decision also attracted criticism. Some argued that in pursuit of formal purity, Mies sacrificed the freedom of the users and hid the realities of everyday life behind absolute order.
Perhaps it is this contradiction that makes the Seagram Building so enduring. It stands as both an icon of functionalism and a work that deliberately employs symbolic, even decorative elements. A project that appears remarkably simple at first glance, yet reveals deeper layers of Mies van der Rohe's thinking the longer you study it. And perhaps its greatest lesson is this: architecture is not only about what we choose to build. Sometimes the most important design decision is what we intentionally leave unbuilt. Thanks for watching this video.